Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to be tackling some of the top cybersecurity and tech news stories. Talking spyware, AI gone rogue, the looming threat of cyber warfare. You know, the light stuff.
Sounds fun. It's a good thing we're doing a deep dive because honestly, these stories are starting to converge and create a very complex landscape. It's not just individual incidents anymore.
Yeah, you really have to keep an eye on everything, or it's easy to fall behind. So let's just jump right into it. Let's start with the spyware. The discovery of this Paragon spyware, right? WhatsApp revealed that it was being used to target, I think it was journalists and activists. And they believed around 90 users were targeted.
Yeah, and you know what makes this incident really stand out to me is that it involves this readily available commercial spyware.
Yeah.
And it's being used against individuals that, hold power accountable. So this trend, it poses a significant threat to things like press freedom and privacy.
Yeah. I mean, it's not the first time that we've seen this. What makes Paragon stand out to you? What makes it different?
Well, while the specifics of how WhatsApp detected the spyware are still under wraps, it seems like the fact that a commercial entity is involved and that their client is governmental definitely raises red flags.
Yeah, that's definitely scary stuff.
Hmm.
And, you know, it's a little unnerving just not knowing who's ultimately behind the attack and how vulnerable we are. I mean, could my phone be infected?
Right. And that's really a concern. I mean, in the digital age, everybody's a potential target. This situation, it really underscores the need for robust cybersecurity at all levels, right? We need individuals taking personal device security seriously, organizations need to be safeguarding their networks, and governments need to enact strong legal frameworks.
So you're saying everyone's got to step up their game, basically?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Let's move on to Google's new AI service, Gemini. This is a big story.
It is. Gemini is capable of incredible things, but there are reports that indicate that nation-state actors, including Iran, China, and North Korea, are already exploiting it for malicious purposes.
Right.
Yeah, we're talking amplified phishing attacks, advanced malware development, the works.
It makes me wonder, should Google even release such powerful AI tools to the public? It's like giving bad actors a loaded weapon.
I think that's a valid point. AI is a powerful tool, no doubt, and as it develops, we need to be prepared for more sophisticated attacks and misuse. This means developing safeguards, creating ethical guidelines, and fostering international cooperation. That's crucial.
So what should the average person do? Should we be living in fear of these AI-powered attacks?
No, I don't think fear is productive, but awareness is key. Understand the potential dangers, be cautious of suspicious online activity, and support responsible AI development and regulation.
Okay, so be aware, be cautious. Got it. Speaking of being cautious, let's talk about the next big story.
Yeah.
Cyber warfare. The 2025 predictions aren't exactly comforting.
Right. The predicted surge in state-sponsored attacks targeting critical infrastructure and civilians is alarming. I think what's really scary here is that the lines between military and civilian targets, they're blurring, and this raises some very serious ethical and security concerns.
Yeah, it feels like we're on the brink of a new type of war, like something out of a movie.
Well, the tools are evolving beyond traditional malware, too. We're talking about AI-powered weapons, the weaponization of everyday IoT devices. There's the potential for immense disruption and damage here.
Hold on, so you're telling me our refrigerators and thermostats could become weapons? That sounds like science fiction.
Yeah, that's where we're at. It's the reality.
Yeah.
And understanding these trends and advocating for policies that address these evolving threats is more crucial than ever. We need to start demanding better security from manufacturers.
Right, so we have AI being used for bad. We have our smart devices potentially becoming weapons. This is a pretty bleak picture we're painting here. Let's try to end on a slightly more positive note, though I don't know how positive this next story is. Let's talk about Apple's recent urgent security updates for iOS, macOS, watchOS, and more. Seems like they're always having to release these.
Right. They're patching a critical zero-day vulnerability that's already being exploited. So, yeah, immediate patching is crucial. We're talking about CVE 2025-24085.
That's a mouthful. So what are we talking? iPhones, Macs, Apple Watches, even Apple TV, right? This vulnerability, it impacts all of them.
Pretty much, yeah. And this is just part of a larger trend. It feels like these zero-day attacks are becoming more and more frequent.
Okay. So, if you're listening, update your devices now. Seriously, this is not the time to procrastinate.
I'm with you there. Delaying updates could have some really serious consequences. Like, a few minutes of your time could prevent a major security breach.
Right. Okay, moving on. Let's shift focus to another group that seems to be very busy these days. We have a new cybercrime group making waves called Crazy Evil. They're targeting cryptocurrency users with over 10 different social media scams, tricking victims into installing information-stealing malware.
Yeah, they seem to be gaining momentum. I think what's particularly interesting about this group is their specialization. They're really exploiting the increasing popularity of cryptocurrency with this very diverse toolkit of scams designed to steal sensitive information like passwords and crypto wallets.
So what can individuals do to protect themselves from this type of attack, especially on social media?
Well, you always have to be cautious of unsolicited messages, especially those offering deals that seem too good to be true. Always verify the authenticity of any requests for personal or financial information, and make sure you enable two-factor authentication on all your accounts.
Okay, two-factor authentication, got it. All right, now let's dive a little deeper into this whole idea of AI being weaponized, because this is a major concern. It seems that nation-state actors are already exploiting Google's Gemini AI to enhance their attack capabilities.
Yeah, Google's threat intelligence group is reporting that Iranian, Chinese, and North Korean actors are all using Gemini for malicious activities.
Mm.
And we're not just talking small-scale stuff here. They're probing for vulnerabilities in defense organizations, they're developing advanced malware, and they're even crafting highly targeted phishing campaigns.
And from what I understand, the report details how these Chinese actors are leveraging Gemini for network infiltration, aiming to exfiltrate data and escalate privileges while remaining completely undetected.
Right, it's scary stuff. And then you have North Korea, on the other hand, who seems to be using Gemini for every phase of the attack cycle, like researching potential infrastructure, developing malware, even crafting, cover letters for undercover IT workers to potentially infiltrate Western companies. That's what we're dealing with.
Wow. So they're using it to get people hired.
They're trying to, yeah. And it seems like they've even been trying to bypass Gemini's security protocols. It's becoming clear that AI is a major factor in the evolving cyber threat landscape. And as these technologies continue to evolve, we can definitely expect to see more creative and more concerning applications by malicious actors.
This all feels like a huge wake-up call. What can security leaders do to mitigate these AI-powered threats? What are we supposed to do?
Well, a good starting point would be examining Google's Secure AI Framework, SAIF. However, we need to be thinking bigger. We need greater collaboration between industry, governments, and the research community to develop comprehensive solutions.
So it's not just about securing the AI systems themselves. It's also about educating users, implementing strong security policies, and having robust incident response plans in place to deal with these emerging threats.
Exactly. AI can be used for good or bad. It's our collective responsibility to ensure it's used ethically and responsibly.
Okay, so on that note, responsibility. There was a recent survey that revealed a pretty concerning statistic. 39% of IT leaders fear a major incident due to their team's excessive workloads. That's a lot.
It is, and it makes sense. Security teams are constantly under pressure, right? Battling this ever-evolving threat landscape with limited resources. And this often leads to burnout, discouragement, and even the sense of security nihilism, where professionals just kind of give up. And that mindset, it can be devastating to an organization's security posture.
Yeah, I mean, if you're working in security and you feel like you're constantly drowning, it's understandable that you might just throw your hands up in the air and say, what's the point?
Exactly. So how do we create a more sustainable environment for these professionals? I think we need to prioritize tasks, delegate effectively, focus on those most critical security risks. Cross-training and building a strong bench of security professionals is also key to prevent burnout.
So it's about shared responsibility support, making sure everyone feels like they're part of the solution.
Absolutely. And we need to prioritize mental health and well-being too. Encouraging employees to take breaks, offering mental health resources, creating a culture where asking for help is okay.
Right. It's about recognizing that security professionals are humans, not machines.
Exactly. And that supporting and nurturing a healthy environment allows them to perform at their best and ultimately keeps organizations secure.
Okay. Moving on from the humans to the bots. The AI chatbot DeepSeek, I'm sure everyone's heard of it by now. It's causing quite a stir. It's rapidly rising in popularity. Millions of users are flocking to it, but there are risks.
There are. We're seeing its popularity being exploited to push malicious packages through repositories like PyPI, and there are some real concerns about data harvesting and potential privacy violations.
And we're already seeing some governments, like Texas, for example, taking action. They're banning DeepSeek on government devices.
Yeah. This whole situation, it really highlights the need to find that balance between the potential benefits of AI and the security and privacy concerns that come with it. It's a complex issue. It requires this ongoing dialogue and collaboration between developers, policymakers, and users to ensure that AI usage remains responsible and ethical.
Right. Responsibility. That seems to be the key word today.
Hmm.
Okay. Shifting gears a bit, let's talk about these cybercrime marketplaces. They're definitely a growing concern. These platforms where criminals can buy and sell hacking tools, stolen data, you name it. They're becoming increasingly sophisticated.
They are. And law enforcement agencies are really struggling to shut these marketplaces down. They operate like a dark web Amazon for criminals. There was a recent takedown of the Heartsender cybercrime group by U.S. and Dutch authorities. They seized 39 domains and servers, which was a significant victory. But new marketplaces, they're just going to emerge. It's kind of like a hydra. You cut off one head and two more grow back.
That feels like an endless game of whack-a-mole. You knock one down and another one pops up. Very frustrating.
It is. But we can't give up. Investing in law enforcement resources, increasing international cooperation, and developing new technological solutions, it's all crucial in combating these threats.
Right. So we can't give up the fight. Okay, on that note, I want to talk about a specific example of this fight. The recent ransomware attack on Tata Technologies, an Indian multinational, they were forced to suspend IT services, which just demonstrates the disruptive power of ransomware.
Yeah, it's a huge problem. And what makes this attack even more significant is that Tata Technologies is a major player in the automotive and aerospace industries. So this attack could have some pretty serious ripple effects across those sectors.
Wow. So this isn't just about one company being hit. It's about a whole chain of industries potentially being disrupted.
Exactly. It shows that no organization is immune to these types of attacks, regardless of size or industry.
So what can organizations do? What steps can they take to protect themselves from these attacks?
Well, having robust security measures in place is crucial, and that includes educating employees, implementing strong security policies, and regularly backing up data.
It's not just about the technology, right? It's about the people and the processes.
Absolutely. Ransomware is a serious threat, but it's not insurmountable. Taking the right steps can significantly reduce the risk of becoming a victim.
Okay, good. So there's hope. Let's talk about hope. Or maybe not. There's a new report out that reveals a concerning trend. 768 vulnerabilities with CVE identifiers were exploited in the wild in 2024. That's a 20% increase from the previous year.
Wow, that's a big jump.
Yeah, it is. It really highlights the increasing vulnerability of our digital world. And, adding to that, almost 24% of those exploited vulnerabilities were weaponized before or during their initial disclosure. Like, attackers are finding and exploiting vulnerabilities before security researchers and software vendors can even patch them.
It's a crazy race against time.
It is. So what can we do? How do we mitigate these risks?
Well, prioritizing patching is crucial. Install software updates immediately, don't delay.
Yeah, it's easy to put off those updates, but this report really highlights the potential consequences of doing so.
Right. And we need to be proactive about identifying and addressing vulnerabilities within our own organizations, too. So conduct regular security assessments, implement strong security policies, and foster a culture of security awareness among employees.
Security awareness. I like that. Okay, speaking of vulnerabilities, there are new reports raising concerns about the security of Apache OFBiz. For our listeners who might not know, that's an open source enterprise resource planning system, or ERP system.
Yeah, and it's a pretty widely used one, too. Cybersecurity researchers have detected attacks targeting vulnerabilities in Apache OFBiz, including some that date back to 2023 and 2024. It seems like attackers are targeting both new and old vulnerabilities, which makes it even more challenging to stay ahead of them.
Right. And there's one vulnerability in particular, CVE 2024-38856, that allows remote, unauthenticated attackers to execute arbitrary code, like potentially giving them complete control of affected systems. That's a big deal.
It is. And while patching, by upgrading to version 18.1.15 or later is essential, organizations need to go beyond just patching. They need to implement strong security policies, conduct regular security audits, and monitor their systems for any suspicious activity.
It really comes down to fostering a culture of security awareness within organizations, right? So that employees can identify and report potential threats before they become major problems.
Exactly. Awareness is key. But despite all this growing awareness of cyber threats, a recent study found that a significant number of people still use weak passwords or they reuse the same password across multiple accounts. It's like leaving your front door unlocked and hoping for the best.
Yeah, it's scary how many people still do that. So what's the solution in this environment? What can we do to encourage people to take password security more seriously?
Well, experts are recommending moving away from traditional passwords altogether and embracing passkeys.
Passkey.
Yeah, they're these randomly generated strings of characters that are used for logins, and they often leverage biometrics like fingerprints or facial recognition.
That sounds pretty futuristic
Yeah,
and secure.
it is. This approach offers a significant security advantage because there's no password to forget, to lose, or to have stolen. And passkeys are also much more resistant to these increasingly sophisticated phishing attacks.
So it's like having a unique, unbreakable key for each of your online accounts.
Exactly. And it's a much more secure and user-friendly way to protect your online identity.
Okay, passkeys, got it. Another thing I want to talk about is this new study that highlights the struggle many organizations are facing in managing SaaS security. Because despite the rapid adoption of cloud-based applications, a surprisingly small percentage actually have a dedicated budget for SaaS security.
Yeah. And that's pretty alarming considering how much sensitive data is often stored in these SaaS applications. A lot of organizations are really struggling to keep pace with the evolving cloud security challenges.
So what can they do? What steps can organizations take to address this gap?
Well, first, they need to recognize that SaaS security is a critical part of their overall security posture. And that means allocating adequate resources and budget to address those risks.
Okay, so it's not just about the money, right? It's also about having the right people and the right processes in place.
Exactly. And it's about collaboration, too. Security teams and cloud service providers need to work together to ensure that security is built into SaaS applications from the ground up.
So it's a shared responsibility model.
Right. And we need to be educating employees about the risks associated with SaaS applications and how to use them securely.
Okay. Moving on to the more technical side of things, the world of XDR platforms is buzzing with discussions about the pros and cons of native sensors versus integrations.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, for our listeners who might not be familiar with this XDR, or Extended Detection and Response, it provides a more holistic view of an organization's security posture, right?
That's a good way to put it. It connects the dots between different security tools and data sources to provide more effective threat detection and response.
Okay, so can you break down the key differences between using native sensors and integrations?
Sure. So native sensors, they're designed specifically for that XDR platform, and they offer some advantages in terms of speed, visibility, and ease of deployment. It's like having all of your security tools speaking the same language. However, they can be limiting in terms of flexibility and customization.
Okay, so native sensors are good for speed and simplicity, but not so much for flexibility.
Right. Integrations, on the other hand, they connect the XDR platform to a wider range of third-party tools. This allows you to leverage existing investments, but it can introduce some complexity and potential performance issues.
So it's a trade-off.
It is. There's no one-size-fits-all answer. The best approach really depends on the specific needs and resources of each organization.
It's about finding that right balance between functionality, flexibility, and cost.
Right.
Okay. Speaking of balance, there's been a big shakeup in the industry. Sophos's acquisition of SecureWorks is making waves.
Oh, yeah, big news. This acquisition brings together two industry giants, right? Sophos is known for their expertise in endpoint and network security, and SecureWorks is really strong in managed security services. Combining those two creates a really powerful force in cybersecurity.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out in the cybersecurity landscape. What do you think the impact will be?
It's hard to say for sure, but it's definitely something to watch.
Okay. And finally, I want to talk about the evolving role of the CISO, the Chief Information Security Officer, because this role is becoming increasingly complex.
Yeah, it definitely is. Traditionally, the CISO oversees an organization's security strategy and operations, but it's no longer just about keeping the bad guys out, right?
Right. It's a much bigger picture now.
It is. CSOs need to align security with business objectives, they need to navigate complex regulations, and they need to manage this rapidly evolving threat environment.
So it's a challenging role.
It is. It requires a strategic and proactive approach.
And strong leadership.
Absolutely. CSOs are becoming trusted advisors to the business, advocating for a culture of security across the entire organization.
So it's not just a technical role anymore, it's a leadership role as well.
Exactly. And it's a vital one.
All right. That's a great point to end on. But before we go, I just want to reiterate something that we've touched on throughout this deep dive, and that's the fact that human error remains a significant factor in so many cyber attacks. Whether it's clicking a phishing link, using a weak password, or falling for a social engineering scam, our actions can be the weakest link in the security chain.
You're absolutely right. And this is why human risk management is so crucial. We need to understand and mitigate the risks associated with human behavior.
Okay, so how do we address this human factor?
Well, I think it comes down to education, strong security policies, and fostering a culture where security is everyone's responsibility, not just the IT departments.
So it's a shared responsibility.
It is. Security isn't just a technical issue, it's a human issue.
That's a great point, and that's something for everyone to keep in mind. Now, we've covered a lot of ground today, but there's one more important concept I want to touch on before we move on to part two, and that's dwell time. That's the time that attackers remain undetected within a network, and it's a growing concern for organizations.
Yeah, it's a big one. The longer the dwell time, the more damage those attackers can inflict. So reducing dwell time is definitely a top priority for security teams.
Right. It's like giving attackers free reign within your systems the longer they remain undetected.
Exactly. So what can we do? Well, implementing XDR can help shorten dwell time by providing that comprehensive view of the network and automating threat detection and response. Strong security hygiene practices, things like patching, vulnerability management, and security awareness training, all play a vital role too.
So it's all about early detection and rapid response.
Exactly. Having a robust incident response plan in place ensures quick containment and remediation of any breaches that do occur.
Right. So you have to be prepared to act quickly. Okay, so let's move on to some more specific examples of these threats in action. Security researchers recently discovered two malicious packages on the Python Package Index, or PyPI. And these packages were actually exploiting the popularity of the DeepSeek AI chatbot that we talked about earlier. They were disguised as client libraries for interacting with the DeepSeek API, but they would actually execute malicious code upon installation.
Sneaky.
Yeah.
Attackers are always looking for new ways to exploit trends and technologies to spread malware.
So it's like a social engineering attack on developers.
It is. And it highlights the importance of carefully vetting packages before downloading and installing them. Look for typos in the package name, inconsistencies in the developer information, or a lack of documentation and reviews. And stay informed about the latest threats and vulnerabilities to be on the lookout for anything suspicious.
So do your research, be cautious. Got it. Okay. Moving on. Qualys recently launched TotalAppSec, which is an AI-powered application risk management solution for monitoring and mitigating cyber risks associated with web applications and APIs.
This is a great development. Web applications and APIs are often gateways to sensitive data and systems, so their security is absolutely paramount.
Right. And from what I understand, TotalAppSec combines API security, web application scanning, and web malware detection across various environments, providing this unified approach to application security.
It does, and it leverages AI to automate security tasks and prioritize critical risks. So it gives you this holistic view of application security risk and posture.
Okay, so it's like having an AI-powered security guard for your web applications.
Yeah, a very smart security guard.
That's reassuring.
Okay.
A new report from Heimdall Security highlights the critical role of endpoint management software in protecting data, ensuring compliance, and managing technology.
Endpoint management is more important than ever with the rise of remote work and this proliferation of devices.
It's like herding cats.
It can be. A robust endpoint management strategy allows organizations to monitor and control devices connected to their network, making sure that security standards are being met and that they are in compliance with all this pesky regulation.
It's about maintaining visibility and control over the entire IT ecosystem.
Right, and it's about equipping employees with the tools and training they need to use their devices securely.
So education and empowerment.
Okay.
Let's talk about a specific vulnerability that's been making headlines. CVE 2024-9474. It affects Palo Alto Network's PAN-OS operating system. And this vulnerability could allow attackers to escalate privileges and take control of firewalls.
This is a serious issue, and immediate patching is critical.
Okay, so patch now. But what other steps can organizations take to protect themselves beyond just patching?
Well, one important step is to restrict access to the management interface. Allowing only trusted internal IP addresses prevents external access from the internet, which minimizes the attack surface and makes it harder for attackers to exploit this vulnerability.
So it's like locking down the control panel.
Exactly. And of course, strong security hygiene practices across the board are crucial for maximizing system security.
Right. Never underestimate the importance of the basics.
Hmm.
Okay, shifting gears a bit. Cyber attacks targeting the healthcare sector are a growing concern. A recent report from Tripwire discusses how the proposed Health Infrastructure Security and Accountability Act, or HISA, could reshape cybersecurity compliance in healthcare.
Healthcare is a prime target for attacks, unfortunately. Attackers are looking to exploit sensitive patient data and disrupt critical infrastructure.
And HISA is aiming to strengthen cybersecurity in the sector by establishing new requirements for risk assessments, incident response, and data protection.
It is. It's about holding healthcare organizations accountable for their cybersecurity practices.
And ultimately, it's about recognizing that cybersecurity in healthcare is a patient safety issue, not just an IT issue.
Right. A breach can have life or death consequences.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay, let's talk about attack surface management. Understanding and managing your attack surface is paramount in today's threat landscape.
It is. The attack surface encompasses all those potential points where an attacker could gain unauthorized access to your systems and data.
It's like the perimeter of your digital fortress.
Good analogy. And as organizations embrace digital transformation and adopt new technologies like cloud computing and IoT, their attack surface expands rapidly.
It's like opening more doors for attackers to exploit.
Exactly. So organizations need to have a clear understanding of their attack surface and implement appropriate security controls to mitigate those risks.
Okay, so know your enemy and know yourself. Now, we've talked a lot about different threat actors today, and I want to circle back to one that we mentioned earlier. The Russian-speaking cybercrime group Crazy Evil is making headlines with over 10 active social media scams, and they're specifically targeting cryptocurrency users.
They seem to be very good at what they do. These are highly specialized scams that lure victims with promises of easy profits.
And they're tricking them into installing information-stealing malware.
Exactly. Once installed, that malware can steal passwords, cryptocurrency wallets, and other sensitive data.
So for our listeners who are active in the cryptocurrency space, what advice would you give them?
Well, exercise extreme caution when interacting with unsolicited messages or offers on social media, especially those related to cryptocurrency. Don't click on links from sources you don't trust.
Right. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Exactly. And make sure you've implemented strong security measures like two-factor authentication and that your antivirus software is up to date. Those are essential for protecting your devices and accounts.
So be smart, be cautious. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Apple recently released some urgent security updates across their entire product line to address a critical zero-day vulnerability.
This is CVE 2025-24085. It affects Apple's core media framework.
And it was reportedly being actively exploited, so attackers could potentially take control of devices.
Yeah, it's a serious vulnerability, and it highlights the importance of keeping your devices updated with the latest security patches. It's a simple step, but it can make all the difference.
Right. Update, update, update. Okay, let's move on to the big picture. Experts are predicting an escalation of state-sponsored cyber attacks in 2025. And they say the critical infrastructure and civilian targets are going to be increasingly in the crosshairs.
This is a very concerning trend. It really signifies a new era of conflict where the lines between military and civilian targets are becoming increasingly blurred, and the potential for disruption and damage is immense.
So we're talking about cyber warfare on a whole new level.
We are. These attacks are going to be more sophisticated. They're going to leverage AI-powered malware, weaponized IoT devices, and a growing reliance on cyber mercenaries and proxy actors.
It sounds almost like something out of a dystopian science fiction novel.
It does, but this is the reality we're facing.
So what can we do? What can we do in the face of such a sophisticated and evolving threat?
Well, it's going to require a comprehensive approach to cybersecurity that encompasses technology, policy, diplomacy, and international cooperation. We need to be working on all fronts to address this challenge.
It's a global issue that demands a global response.
Absolutely.
Okay. And finally, I want to touch on another growing concern, and that's intellectual property theft and cyber espionage. Nation-states are increasingly engaging in these activities to gain a competitive advantage in areas like AI, biotechnology, and quantum computing.
This is a huge problem. These attacks can have devastating consequences for innovation, economic growth, and national security.
So what can we do to counter these threats?
Well, we need to strengthen our defenses. That means implementing robust security controls and fostering a culture of security
It
awareness.
feels like we're constantly playing defense against increasingly sophisticated attackers.
We are. But it's not just about protecting ourselves. It's also about holding perpetrators accountable and working together to deter these attacks.
So it's about creating a global environment where intellectual property is respected and protected.
Exactly. And that's going to require a lot of collaboration and a shared commitment to security.
Right. So, on that note of collaboration and shared responsibility, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back with more of the top cybersecurity and tech news stories.
All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Let's pick up where we left off. A recent interview with Rob Lee, he's the chief of research and head of faculty at SANS Institute. He shed some light on the dangers of a toxic cybersecurity workplace.
Oh, yeah, that was an interesting one. A lot of people were talking about that. It really seems like the industry is facing this cultural crisis. What were some of the warning signs he mentioned that professionals should look out for?
Well, he talked about things like high turnover rates, widespread burnout, and this fear of making mistakes.
Yeah, and those issues, they really point to a deeper problem within the industry, don't they? Like something's not right.
Exactly. When you have a toxic environment, it fosters fear and blame, which hinders innovation, collaboration, and ultimately, undermines security efforts.
Right. It's like shooting yourself in the foot. It's
Yeah.
incredibly counterproductive, especially in a field as critical as cybersecurity.
Exactly. So addressing these issues head on is crucial for creating that, positive and supportive environment that cybersecurity professionals need to thrive.
Okay, so how do we do that? How can organizations cultivate a healthier, more productive workplace culture?
It's not easy, but it's essential. Open communication, a growth mindset, recognition of employee contributions, those are all essential elements.
Right, so it's about fostering trust, respect, and really investing in employee well-being and professional development.
Yeah, it's an investment that pays off in the long run.
Okay, good. Um, let's move on to the next story. Europol's new report raises some concerns about the impact of increasing data volume and data deletion practices on cybercrime investigations.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. It sounds like investigators are having a hard time putting the pieces together with all this data flying around.
It does. So what's the problem here?
Well, law enforcement agencies, they're facing these growing challenges when it comes to accessing and analyzing the data that's crucial to their investigations.
Right. I mean, there's just so much data out there, and it's constantly being created, deleted, moved around. It's like trying to find a needle in a digital haystack.
It is. So what can be done? Well, I think collaboration is key here. Law enforcement, technology companies, other stakeholders, they need to work together to share information, develop new tools and techniques, and overcome those legal and technical barriers to data access.
So it's about breaking down silos and working together. Makes sense.
Yes, cybercrime is a global issue, so it demands a global response.
Okay, good. Um, let's talk about something that's both exciting and a little bit scary. The emergence of agentic AI.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
So for our listeners who might not be familiar with the term, can you explain what agentic AI is?
Sure. Agentic AI systems, they can act independently to achieve goals. It's like having a personal assistant who can anticipate your needs and take action without explicit instructions.
So it's AI that can think for itself, basically.
In a way, yes, and the potential applications across industries are vast. But there are also risks.
Right. What kind of risks are we talking about?
Well, the potential for misuse is a real concern. We need to carefully consider the ethical implications of agentic AI and develop safeguards to ensure it's used responsibly and safely.
Okay, so like with any powerful technology, it's about using it wisely and ethically.
Exactly. AI should serve humanity, not the other way around. And it's crucial to have these conversations now before these technologies advance beyond our control.
Right. Prevention is better than cure. Okay. CSO Online is emphasizing the need to go beyond strong passwords to secure our online accounts.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So you're saying strong passwords aren't enough anymore?
Well, they're still important, but they're no longer sufficient. Attackers are using more sophisticated techniques like phishing and credential stuffing to compromise even the strongest passwords.
So what can we do? What other measures can we take to enhance our account security?
Well, enabling two-factor authentication wherever possible is crucial. It adds an extra layer of security by requiring a code from your phone or email in addition to your password.
Right. So it's like having a double lock on your front door, making
Huh.
it much harder for attackers to gain access.
Exactly. And there are other things you can do too, like using a password manager to generate and store unique, strong passwords for each of your accounts.
Okay, good to know. So strong passwords are still important, but we need to be doing more to protect ourselves.
Absolutely.
Okay, shifting gears a bit. The New York Blood Center was recently hit with a ransomware attack, forcing them to reschedule appointments.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. And it highlights the fact that these attacks can have real-world consequences.
And attacks on healthcare organizations are particularly concerning, aren't they? Because they can disrupt essential services and potentially put lives at risk.
Exactly. This incident serves as a stark reminder that ransomware remains a significant threat, and organizations need to have robust security measures in place to protect themselves.
So what can they do?
Well, education is key. Employees need to understand the risks of ransomware and how to avoid falling victim. That includes recognizing phishing emails and malicious links, and being cautious about what they download and click on.
Right. So it's about training employees to be more security aware.
Exactly. And organizations also need to have strong backup and recovery plans in place so they can quickly restore their systems if they are hit with ransomware.
Okay, so back up your data, train your employees, and be vigilant.
That's a good summary.
Okay, good. Let's move on to the next story. Cyber is reporting that several vulnerabilities are being actively exploited, including flaws in Palo Alto Network's PAN-OS firewall and the Apache OFBiz ERP system that we talked about earlier.
Yeah, it seems like there's a constant stream of new vulnerabilities emerging. It's a never-ending battle for security teams to keep up.
It is. So how do they do it? How do they stay ahead of the attackers?
Well, it requires continuous monitoring and threat detection. They need to be implementing tools like honeypots and intrusion detection systems to identify and respond to suspicious activity.
So it's like having a 247 surveillance system for your network.
That's a good way to think about it. And they also need to be proactive about identifying and mitigating vulnerabilities. That means patching systems regularly, conducting security audits, and using vulnerability scanners to identify weaknesses before attackers can exploit them.
Right, so it's about being proactive, not reactive.
Exactly. The best defense is a good offense.
Okay, good. SecPod's 2024 annual vulnerability report revealed a 30% increase in global vulnerabilities compared to the previous year.
Wow, that's a significant jump.
Yeah, it really underscores the growing challenge of managing security risks. So with all these vulnerabilities out there, what can organizations do to prepare themselves for the inevitable? Because it seems like it's not a matter of if you'll be attacked, but when.
You're right. No organization is immune to attack, so it's essential to have a solid incident response plan in place.
Right. So it's about being prepared for the worst case scenario.
Exactly. A well-defined incident response plan outlines the steps an organization takes to contain and remediate a breach, minimizing damage and ensuring swift recovery.
So it's like a fire drill for cyber attacks, making sure everyone knows how to react effectively.
That's a good analogy. And it's not just about having a plan, it's about regularly testing and updating that plan to make sure it's effective.
Right. So practice makes perfect.
Exactly.
Okay, good. Let's move on to something that sounds a bit like science fiction. Experts are predicting that we're going to see a surge in attacks leveraging everyday IoT devices as weapons in 2025.
Yeah, that's a scary thought.
So we're talking about our smart homes, our connected cars, all of that potentially becoming tools for cyber warfare.
It's a real and growing threat, and it's not surprising given the explosion of IoT devices and the fact that security is often an afterthought for manufacturers.
Right. It seems like convenience often trumps security.
It often does. So what can we do? Well, we need to start demanding better security from IoT device manufacturers. We need to make sure that security is baked into these devices from the start, not just added on as an afterthought.
So it's about raising awareness and putting pressure on manufacturers to prioritize security.
Exactly. And we also need to be more discerning about the devices we connect to our networks. We need to make sure that they are properly secured and updated.
So it's about being aware of the risks and taking proactive steps to protect ourselves.
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Let's talk about passkeys again. CSO Online is highlighting their benefits as a more secure and user-friendly authentication technology compared to traditional passwords.
Yeah, we talked about them briefly earlier, but they're worth revisiting.
They are. So can you remind our listeners how they work?
Sure. Passkeys are randomly generated, and they leverage biometrics like fingerprints or facial recognition for logins.
Right. So instead of typing in a password, you might use your fingerprint to log in.
Exactly. And this approach offers a significant security advantage because there's no password to forget, lose, or steal. And passkeys are also resistant to phishing attacks.
So it's a win-win. More secure and easier to use.
It is. And we're starting to see wider adoption of passkeys, which is encouraging.
Okay, good. Another quick update. Apple has released patches for CVE 2025-24085, a vulnerability affecting their core media framework.
Yeah, we mentioned that earlier. It was reportedly being actively exploited, so it's a critical vulnerability.
And just to remind our listeners, what devices are affected by this vulnerability?
This one impacts iOS, iPadOS, macOS, Hattie tvOS, visionOS, and watchOS.
So basically all Apple devices.
Pretty much. So it's essential to update your devices with the latest security patches as soon as possible to mitigate the risk of exploitation.
Right. Don't delay those updates.
Exactly. Staying up to date is a collective responsibility that helps create a more secure digital environment for everyone.
Okay, good. Back to the big picture. Experts are forecasting an escalation in state-sponsored cyber attacks in 2025, with critical infrastructure and civilian targets in the crosshairs.
Yeah, we've talked about this a few times already, but it's worth repeating. It's a disturbing trend that is blurring the lines of traditional warfare.
And it's not just about military targets anymore.
No, civilians are increasingly becoming targets, which raises serious ethical concerns.
It does. So with these increasingly sophisticated attacks, what can we do to protect ourselves?
Well, it requires a multifaceted approach. We need to strengthen our defenses, implement robust security controls, and foster a culture of security awareness.
So it's about technology, but it's also about people and processes.
Exactly. And it's also about international cooperation. We need to be working together to deter these attacks and hold perpetrators accountable.
Right. It's a global issue that demands a global response. Okay, good. And finally, I want to touch on intellectual property theft and cyber espionage again. Nation-states are increasingly engaging in these activities to gain a competitive advantage in areas like AI, biotechnology, and quantum computing.
Yeah, this is a growing problem. And it's not just about stealing trade secrets anymore. It's about gaining access to cutting-edge technologies that can have far-reaching implications for national security and economic dominance.
So what can we do? What measures can be taken to counter these threats?
Well, we need to be proactive. We need to strengthen our defenses, implement robust security controls, and foster a culture of security awareness within organizations.
So it's about being prepared and being vigilant.
It is. And it's also about working together to deter these attacks and hold perpetrators accountable.
Right. It's a collective effort. We all have a role to play in protecting intellectual property and defending against cyber espionage.
Exactly. And that requires a global commitment to cybersecurity.
Okay, good. So we've covered a lot of ground today. It's been a whirlwind of information. But I think the key takeaway is that cybersecurity is a complex and ever-evolving challenge.
It is, and it's something that we all need to be aware of and engaged in, whether we're individuals, organizations, or governments.
Right. We all have a role to play in creating a safer and more secure digital world.
Absolutely. And remember, knowledge is power. The more we understand the threats and the more we do to protect ourselves, the better off we'll be.
Okay, good. So let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back with more of the top cybersecurity and tech news stories.
It's definitely been a busy week in the world of cybersecurity and tech news. A lot to unpack.
It has. This news cycle has really been a whirlwind of information, hasn't it? I feel like we've covered everything from spyware targeting journalists to the weaponization of AI and the rise of those cybercrime marketplaces.
Yeah, and don't forget about ransomware, vulnerabilities, and the evolving threat of cyber warfare. It seems like the threats to our security and privacy are constantly evolving and becoming more sophisticated.
It does, yeah. It's a lot to keep up with, but I think it's important that we stay informed and do what we can to protect ourselves. It can feel overwhelming at times, though, can it?
It can, but it's not all doom and gloom. It's important to remember that there have been some positive developments too. We're seeing the emergence of new security technologies, a growing awareness of human risk, and more of a focus on international cooperation.
Yeah, that's true. It feels like a constant tug of war, though, doesn't it? Between those trying to exploit vulnerabilities and those trying to defend against them. What do you think? Are we winning the war?
It's hard to say, but I think we are making progress. The key is to stay vigilant, stay informed, and keep working together. We can't afford to become complacent.
I agree. So for our listeners tuning in today, what would you say is the most important thing for them to remember?
Cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility. Whether you're a journalist, a CEO, or just an everyday internet user, we all have a role to play in protecting ourselves and our communities.
That's a great point. We need to be proactive, we need to stay informed, and we need to work together to create a safer digital world for everyone.
Absolutely. And remember, a healthy dose of skepticism can go a long way in this digital age. Don't trust everything you see online. Verify your sources, be cautious about what you click on, and don't be afraid to ask questions.
Great advice. Well, that brings us to the end of another deep dive into the world of cybersecurity and tech news.
It's been a pleasure, as always.
Thanks for joining us today. Until next time, stay safe and stay informed.